Finally, your house is mine, my sister declared in court. My parents applauded. I stayed silent until the judge looked up and said, "One of the 12 properties I see. I'd like to take a look. Your little real estate game ends today." My brother-in-law Chris leaned in close as he passed me in the courtroom aisle, his breath hot against my ear, smelling like coffee and overconfidence. Behind him, my sister Nicole adjusted her designer blazer, the one that cost more than I used to make in a month as a janitor, and smirked like she'd already won. My parents sat 3 rows back in the gallery, nodding with satisfaction. They looked like they were watching justice being served instead of witnessing a coordinated robbery of their own son. The bailiff called court to order at 9:47 a.m. Judge Patricia Brown took the bench, her reading glasses perched on her nose, gray hair pulled back in the same severe bun she'd worn in every newspaper photo I'd ever seen of her. 32 years on the bench, known for not tolerating nonsense. Chris's lawyer stood first, Marcus Donnelly, partner at Donnelly and Hughes. Expensive suit. 75 years of combined firm experience, according to their website. The kind of lawyer you hire when you want to crush someone. He was holding up a contract I'd never seen before in my life. "Your Honor," Donnelly said, his voice smooth and practiced. "Daniel Manning has exhibited extreme emotional instability and poor judgment for years. However, this document was signed during what we believe was a rare moment of clarity." The defendant clearly stated, quote, "This vacation home is for the whole family to enjoy," and signed the property transfer willingly. I sat perfectly still in my chair, digging my nails into my palms hard enough to leave marks. "Recently," Donnelly continued, "Mr. Manning has entered another unstable phase. He's now attempting to renege on this legitimate promise in order to selfishly monopolize a valuable asset worth approximately $1 million. The plaintiffs, his own sister and brother-in-law, are simply asking the court to enforce an agreement he made voluntarily." Nicole whispered something to Chris. They both smiled. That same smile I'd seen 1,000 times growing up. The smile that meant I was about to lose something. My father leaned forward in his seat, arms crossed over his chest. 8 years ago, he'd told me real estate was a waste of time for someone with your limitations. "Daniel, you have no business sense, no talent for numbers. Just find a stable job with benefits and stop embarrassing this family with your ridiculous schemes." Now they were trying to steal what I'd built anyway. Judge Brown examined the contract carefully, her eyes moving across the pages with the deliberate attention of someone who'd seen every trick in the book. The scratching of the court reporter's machine filled the silence. Someone coughed in the gallery. She slowly raised her head and looked directly at me. "Mr. Manning," she said, her voice neutral but sharp as a scalpel. "This address listed in the contract, 847 Lakeshore Drive, is listed as one of 12 properties in your current real estate portfolio. Is that correct?" The air left the room. Every head turned toward me. Chris's smirk froze on his face like someone had hit pause. Nicole's hand stopped halfway to her mouth. My parents stopped nodding. "That's correct, Your Honor," I replied, keeping my voice steady. 12 properties. Judge Brown shuffled the papers in front of her. "I'd very much like to review documentation of the rest of your holdings as well for context." The confidence drained from Chris's side of the courtroom like water from a broken glass. My lawyer stood. Richard Chen, 53 years old, solo practitioner, 28 years, specializing in real estate law. Not flashy, not expensive looking, just competent. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a massive stack of files. "Your Honor, to provide the full context of this case, I'd like to walk through my client's complete asset portfolio and explain how he acquired each property." Judge Brown nodded. "Please proceed." Richard began reading slowly, deliberately, each word landing like a hammer. "The first property was purchased 8 years ago, a 450-feet studio apartment in Oldtown purchased for $42,000. The down payment of $8,400 was saved entirely by Mr. Manning while working 2 jobs as a night janitor at Riverside Medical Center and as a weekend waiter at Chapayer Restaurant." My father's face went white. He'd called that apartment a dump not worth the dirt it sits on when I'd shown him the closing documents with pride. "The second property," Richard continued, "was acquired 14 months later in September 2016. A commercial building at 1247 Commerce Street, purchased for $180,000. The down payment came from rental income from the first property combined with Mr. Manning's continued employment savings. Nicole gripped Chris's arm hard enough that I could see her knuckles go white from across the aisle. The third property was purchased in March 2017. A duplex at 89 Maple Avenue. With each address Richard read, each purchase price, each detail about how I'd scraped together down payments and renovated properties myself to save money. I watched my family's faces change. Confusion first, then disbelief, then something that looked like horror. When Richard reached the sixth property, a 4-unit apartment building that had nearly bankrupted me during the renovation, but now generated $87,000 annually in rental income, my mother covered her mouth with her hand. The 7th property, the 8th property, the 9th property. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. A reporter in the back row started scribbling frantically in her notebook. And the 10th property, Richard announced, his voice dropping slightly for emphasis. Located at 1500 Riverside Avenue, commonly known as the Phoenix Lofts. The courtroom went completely silent. Phoenix Lofts, the miracle redevelopment project that everyone in the city knew about. The building that had transformed a crime-ridden as eyesore into a mixed-use cultural landmark with restaurants, boutique shops, and 62 luxury apartments. The building that had been featured in Architecture Digest 3 months ago. Chris had bragged about getting reservations at Lumiere, the French restaurant on the top floor, just 2 weeks ago at my parents' anniversary dinner. Nicole shopped at that artisan boutique on the ground level, the one that sold $200 candles and handmade jewelry. They'd been spending money in my building, bragging about their access to my property. I watched the realization hit them like a freight train. Judge Brown leaned forward. The Phoenix Lofts, I see. That's a rather significant property. She turned to Marcus Donnelly. Counselor, moments ago, you claimed that Mr. Manning lacks sound judgment and engages in reckless, emotionally driven spending. Yet, according to this documentation, he owns and successfully operates one of the most acclaimed redevelopment projects in this city in addition to at least 9 other income-producing properties. How do you explain this rather fatal discrepancy in your claims? Donnelly stammered. Actually stammered. Your Honor, the plaintiffs were not aware of the full extent. The plaintiffs are his sister and parents, Judge Brown interrupted. They claim intimate knowledge of his mental state, yet they somehow remained completely unaware of his substantial business success. Chris grabbed Nicole's hand under the table. She was breathing fast, her chest rising and falling visibly. Richard wasn't done. Your Honor, there's one more property I'd like to enter into evidence. The 12th and most recent acquisition. He produced the final file with the careful ceremony of a magician revealing his best trick. The property located at 742 Grand Avenue. Officially designated as the Grand Majestic Theater, a city historical landmark. Someone in the gallery actually gasped. The theater, the beautiful old movie palace that everyone loved, the one that had been saved from demolition by an anonymous patron 3 years ago. The restoration that the mayor had praised in her State of the City address. That was mine. Mr. Manning personally funded the complete restoration, Richard continued, his voice carrying through the silent courtroom. The project cost $2.8 million and took 18 months to complete. He received an official commendation from the City Historical Preservation Society and a certificate of merit from the Mayor's Office for Historic Conservation. He submitted the gold-framed certificate as evidence. I'd kept it in my office. Had never shown it to my family. Never mentioned it because why would I? They'd made it clear years ago that nothing I did mattered to them. Judge Brown examined the forged contract again, her expression hardening. Regarding this document your clients presented, she said to Donnelly, we commissioned a forensic analysis from Patricia Morrison, certified forensic document examiner with 23 years of experience. Her report indicates that the signature doesn't match Mr. Manning's verified handwriting samples with 98.7% certainty. Nicole let out a choked sob. Chris's head dropped forward. More importantly, Richard added, the ink used in this document is a polymer-based blend from Microte Industries. That particular formula was released to market 3 months ago, but this contract is dated 14 months ago. He looked directly at Chris and Nicole. Do the plaintiffs own a time machine, Your Honor? Because that's the only way they could have used ink that didn't exist. When this document was supposedly signed, suppressed laughter rippled through the courtroom. Someone in the back actually snorted. Judge Brown's gavel came down like thunder. This petition is dismissed with prejudice. The court finds the evidence of fraud and perjury compelling enough to refer this matter to the district attorney's office immediately for criminal investigation. She looked at Nicole and Chris with the kind of contempt usually reserved for people who hurt children or puppies. You attempted to defraud your own family member out of a substantial asset using falsified documents and demonstrably false claims about his mental capacity. This court takes such matters very seriously. Chris's head hit the table. Actually hit it. Forehead against wood. Nicole was weeping now, mascara running down her face. My parents sat frozen in their seats, their faces the color of old newspaper. But I'd built something real while they'd been busy dismissing me, while they'd been laughing at my ridiculous schemes. And telling me I'd never amount to anything. I stood, adjusted my jacket off the rack from Men's Warehouse, not custom-made like Chris's, because I didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore, and walked toward the exit. My footsteps echoed on the marble floor. As I passed their table, I leaned down close enough that only they could hear. The game's over, I whispered. I won. 8 years earlier, I'd been 25 years old, living in my parents' basement, working 2 minimum wage jobs, and listening to them tell me I was wasting my life. Real estate. My father had laughed when I'd mentioned wanting to buy a property. Danny, you can barely balance your checkbook. You think you can manage a rental property? Be realistic. Get a job at the post office. They have good benefits. My sister Nicole had been worse. She was 3 years younger, fresh out of college with her marketing degree, already engaged to Chris, who worked in finance at his father's investment firm. Some people are meant to be successful, she'd said over Thanksgiving dinner that year, while Chris nodded along. And some people are meant to, well, work for successful people. It's just how the world works, Danny. You shouldn't feel bad about it. She'd said it kindly, like she was trying to help me accept my limitations. I'd stopped going to family dinners after that. Instead, I'd work 70-hour weeks, night shift at the hospital, mopping floors and cleaning rooms, weekend shifts at the restaurant. Carrying plates and smiling at people who looked through me like I was furniture. I'd saved $8,400 in 14 months. Every penny I didn't need for gas and food. And I'd bought that studio apartment in Oldtown for $42,000. It was a disaster. Needed everything. New flooring, new fixtures, paint, appliances that actually worked. I'd done most of the work myself. Watching YouTube videos at 2 a.m. learning how to install tile and fix drywall and replace electrical outlets. My father had driven by once while I was carrying lumber up the stairs. You're going to lose everything, he'd said through his car window. That neighborhood will never recover. You're throwing your money away. He drove off before I could respond. 6 months later, I'd rented it out for $850 a month. My mortgage was $320, pure profit of $530 monthly. It wasn't much, but it was proof. Property 2 came 14 months after that. The commercial building needed even more work than the apartment. The previous owner had let it deteriorate for years, but the location was good downtown near the new transit hub they were building. I'd taken out a second job doing overnight inventory at a warehouse to afford the down payment. Nicole had sent me a Facebook message around that time. I still had it saved. Heard you bought another investment property. Lol. Mom says you're going to end up bankrupt. Maybe you should stop pretending to be a real estate mogul and get a real job. Just saying this because I care about you. I'd blocked her after that. Property 3, Property 4, Property 5. Each one was a risk. Each one was a gamble. Each one required me to work harder, sacrifice more, learn faster. The 6th property, the 4-unit apartment building, nearly ended me. The inspection had missed major foundation issues. The repairs cost $47,000 that I didn't have. I'd maxed out every credit card, taken a loan against my other properties, and spent 6 months thinking I'd finally proven my family right. But I'd fixed it. Rented all 4 units, refinanced at a lower rate, turned it into my most profitable property. I never told anyone how close I'd come to losing everything. By year 5, I owned 8 properties. My portfolio was worth $3.2 million. I was making $180,000 annually in rental income. My family thought I was still working as a janitor. I'd let them think that. Showed up to Christmas in my old Honda Civic. Wore cheap clothes. Never corrected them when they talked about my dead-end jobs. Because I'd learned something important. People will tell you who they are if you just stay quiet and listen. Property 10 changed everything. The Phoenix Lofts had been a condemned building. Crumbling brick, broken windows, drug dealers on the corners. The city wanted to demolish it. I'd bought it for $400,000 at auction. Everyone thought I was insane. The renovation took 2 years and cost $3.8 million. I'd partnered with 2 other investors, brought in architects and contractors, dealt with the city Planning Commission and the Historical Society. When it opened, the mayor cut the ribbon herself. Architecture Digest called it a triumph of adaptive reuse and community-focused development. My family didn't know because I'd bought it through an LLC because my name wasn't on the press releases because I wanted to keep building something real without their voices in my head telling me I couldn't. The Grand Majestic Theater was personal. My grandmother had taken me there when I was 8 years old. We'd seen old movies on weekends. Casablanca, Singing in the Rain, The Wizard of Oz, while she ate popcorn and told me stories about watching those same movies when she was young. When she passed away, she'd left me $50,000. My parents had suggested I invest it responsibly in an index fund. Instead, when the theater came up for sale, abandoned, deteriorating, scheduled for demolition to make way for a parking garage, I'd bought it. Used that $50,000 as seed money, raised the rest through historic preservation grants, private investors who believed in the project, and a loan from a community development bank. The restoration took 18 months, every detail period accurate. The original marquee rebuilt, the seats reupholstered, the projection booth, equipped with both modern digital and restored 35mm capabilities. We showed classic films on weekends, hosted film festivals, became a gathering place for the community. The certificate of merit from the mayor's office hung in my home office next to a photograph of my grandmother. I'd never told my family about any of it until Nicole's lawsuit forced everything into the light. The lawsuit had started 3 months ago. I'd been at the theater. We were hosting a Hitchcock retrospective when my phone rang. Unknown number. Daniel Manning, a woman's voice, professional and cold, speaking. This is Jennifer Wallace from Donnie and Hughes. I'm calling to inform you that you're being served with legal papers regarding property located at 847 Lakeshore Drive. A process server will be at your residence tomorrow at 9:04 a.m. What papers? What property? Your sister Nicole and her husband Christopher have filed a petition to enforce a property transfer agreement. I suggest you obtain legal representation. Good day. She'd hung up before I could respond. The property at 847 Lakeshore Drive was my lakehouse. I'd bought it 2 years ago for $950,000. It was beautiful. 4 bedrooms. Private dock, 2 acres of wooded land. I'd never promised it to anyone. The process server had shown up exactly at 900 a.m. A woman in her 50s with a clipboard and a manila envelope. Daniel Manning, that's me. You've been served. Inside the envelope was a complaint and a document I'd never seen before. A property transfer agreement allegedly signed by me, promising to give the lake house to Nicole and Chris for use as a family vacation home. The signature looked like mine, close enough to fool someone who didn't know better, but I'd never signed anything, never promised them a vacation home, hadn't even told them I owned a lake house. I'd called Richard Chen that afternoon. We'd met in his small office above a Thai restaurant downtown, files stacked on every surface, coffee stains on his desk, but his eyes had been sharp when he'd examined the document. This is a forgery, he'd said within 5 minutes. A good one, but still a forgery. See here, the pressure points are wrong. The letter formation is slightly off. This was either traced or generated using software. Can you prove it? I know someone. Patricia Morrison, best forensic document examiner in the state. She'll charge $2,500 for a full analysis. Do it. There's more, Richard had said, flipping through the complaint. They're claiming you're mentally unstable. that you've exhibited erratic behavior and poor financial judgment for years. They have statements from your parents supporting this. My parents had signed affidavits saying I was emotionally unstable. My own parents. They're trying to establish a pattern, Richard explained, make you look incompetent, then claim this property transfer was made during a moment of clarity before you relapsed into instability. It's a common tactic in cases like this. Cases like what? Family members trying to steal property from relatives they think can't defend themselves. I'd sat there in that office that smelled like pad thai and old coffee, staring at signatures from my mother and father, and felt something cold settle into my chest. How do we proceed? I'd asked. Richard had smiled. Not a friendly smile, a shark's smile. We document everything, every property you own, every successful business decision you've made, every credential, every commendation, every proof that you're not just competent, you're exceptional. And then we walk into that courtroom and we destroy their entire case. I've never told them about most of my properties. Even better, the revelation will be more dramatic. Over the next 3 months, Nicole and Chris's lawyer had sent discovery requests, asked for financial statements, tried to depose me about my mental health history. Richard had stonewalled them, given them the minimum required by law, made them work for every piece of information. Meanwhile, Patricia Morrison had completed her analysis. The signature was forged, generated using software designed to replicate handwriting. The ink was wrong, too new for the supposed date. The paper showed signs of artificial aging. It was fraud, pure and simple. But Nicole and Chris had gotten bolder, started telling extended family that I was sick and needed help, that they were trying to protect family assets from my poor judgment. My aunt had called me, voice full of concern. Danny, Nicole says you've been making bad financial decisions, that you're in over your head with debt. Is that true? Because if you need help, I'm fine, Aunt Carol. She said you bought some rundown building downtown and it's bankrupting you. The Phoenix Lofts. She was talking about the Phoenix Lofts, which had increased in value by $4.2 million since I'd purchased it. I appreciate your concern, but I'm doing well. Better than well, if you say so, but Nicole seems really worried. She's your sister. She loves you. I'd hung up after that. Blocked half my extended family's numbers because that's what Nicole did. She poisoned wells, made herself the hero, made me the problem. She'd done it our whole lives. The courtroom confrontation was the culmination of 3 months of legal warfare, 3 months of them underestimating me one last time. And I'd let them walk into that courtroom confident. Let them think they'd already won because the higher they climbed, the further they'd fall. After Judge Brown's ruling, I'd walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun. Richard met me on the steps carrying his battered briefcase. The DA's office will be in touch, he said. Charges for fraud, perjury, and attempted theft. Your sister and brother-in-law are looking at serious consequences. Good. Your parents might face charges, too. They signed those affidavits. I thought about that, about my father telling me I had no talent. My mother agreeing I should just get a stable job and stop reaching for more. Let the DA decide, I said. Richard nodded. For what it's worth, you handled yourself well in there. Most people would have gloated. You stayed quiet and let the evidence speak. My grandmother used to say that success is the best revenge. She was right, wise woman. She was the only one who believed in me. I looked back at the courthouse. Through the glass doors, I could see Nicole and Chris arguing with their lawyer. My parents standing nearby, looking lost. They wanted one vacation home, I said quietly. I've been protecting an empire worth 12 times that, built from nothing while they called me worthless. They'll realize that now. Too late. I walked to my car. I'd upgraded to a Tesla Model S the previous year, another thing they didn't know about, and drove to the theater. The afternoon showing was about to start. Rear Window, one of my grandmother's favorites. I sat in the back row in the dark and watched Jimmy Stewart peer through binoculars at his neighbors. Watched him piece together the truth that everyone else was too blind to see. Sometimes I felt like that, like I'd been watching my family from a distance, seeing who they really were while they performed for each other. The difference was I'd built something real while they'd been performing, and now everyone could see it. The DA's office filed charges 2 weeks later. Nicole, 3 counts of fraud, 2 counts of perjury, 1 count of attempted theft by deception. Chris, 3 counts of fraud, 2 counts of perjury, 1 count of conspiracy. My parents, 2 counts of perjury each for the false affidavit. The arraignment was covered by local news. Siblings in court battle over forged property documents. Nicole's muggish shot made the evening broadcast. She looked smaller, somehow diminished. The trial was set for 4 months later. Their lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal. Richard said, "No, they chose this path. He told me, they chose to paint you as incompetent, to steal from you, to humiliate you in court. They get to face the consequences." The DA agreed. No deals, full prosecution. Meanwhile, the story spread. The Phoenix Lofts Management Company got calls from reporters asking about the secret owner who saved the building. The Grand Majestic Theater got a feature in the local arts magazine. Anonymous benefactor revealed local real estate developer's labor of love. My name was in both articles. Within a week, I got calls from 3 different developers wanting to partner on projects. 2 banks offered me lines of credit. A business school asked if I'd speak to their entrepreneurship class. I accepted the speaking invitation, stood in front of 75 students and told them the truth. My family told me I had no talent, no business sense, that I should stop embarrassing them with my ridiculous schemes. I could have believed them, could have accepted their narrative about who I was and what I deserved. The room was silent. Instead, I worked 3 jobs, saved every penny, bought a studio apartment everyone said was a terrible investment, and I built something real. 1 property at a time, 1 risk at a time. While they laughed, I learned. While they dismissed me, I grew. While they told me I couldn't, I did. A student in the front row raised her hand. How did you deal with the doubt? The fear that they might be right. I made the doubt fuel. Every time my father said I'd fail, I worked harder. Every time my sister said I'd never amount to anything, I bought another property. I turned their expectations into a challenge. I was determined to win. Do you regret not telling them, not proving them wrong sooner? No, because building in silence taught me something important. You don't need their validation. You don't need their approval. You just need to do the work. After the speech, a young woman approached me, maybe 22, eyes bright with determination. My parents think I'm wasting my time starting a business, she said. They want me to go to medical school, be a doctor like my dad, but I don't want that. What do you want? I want to build something that matters, something that's mine. I pulled out a business card, call my office. I invest in promising ventures. Let's talk about yours. She'd left with tears in her eyes. Maybe I could be for her what my grandmother had been for me. The one person who believed the trial lasted 6 days. I sat in the gallery every day watching Nicole and Chris squirm under cross-examination. Patricia Morrison testified about the forged signature, showed the jury side-by-side comparisons of my real signature versus the fake. Explained the ink analysis, the paper aging, the digital artifacts that proved forgery. The detective who'd investigated, Robert Chen, Financial Crimes Unit, 18 years on the force, walked through how they'd traced the software purchase to Chris's credit card. The defendant purchased Signature Forge Pro software 3 months before the alleged contract was signed, Chen testified. Our digital forensics team found multiple practice versions of Mr. Manning's signature on his laptop. Nicole's lawyer tried to argue that Chris was just practicing his brother-in-law's signature for legitimate purposes. What legitimate purposes? The prosecutor asked. No answer. My parents didn't testify. Their lawyer advised them to take the fifth, but their affidavit were entered as evidence, their signatures displayed on the overhead screen. Your parents swore under penalty of perjury that you were mentally unstable, the prosecutor said to me on the stand. How did that make you feel? Disappointed, but not surprised. They'd been telling me I wasn't good enough my whole life. This was just the first time they put it in writing. On day 5, the prosecution rested. The defense called no witnesses. What could they say? The evidence was overwhelming. Closing arguments took 3 hours. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. Guilty on all counts for both Nicole and Chris. My parents took a plea deal the next day, probation and community service in exchange for testimony against Nicole and Chris. They'd sold out their daughter to save themselves. Sentencing came 4 weeks later. Nicole, 18 months in prison, 3 years probation, $50,000 in restitution. Chris, 2 years in prison, 3 years probation, $50,000 in restitution. They were let out in handcuffs. Nicole was crying. Chris stared straight ahead, face blank. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, just a quiet sense of closure. Outside the courthouse, a reporter approached me. "Mr. Manning, do you have anything to say to your sister? I thought about it, about all the years of being dismissed, mocked, underestimated. I hope she uses her time to reflect on the choices that led her here. That's all. Do you forgive her? Forgiveness is for people who acknowledge what they did wrong. She's never done that, probably never will. What's next for you?" "I have a theater to run, properties to manage, a business to grow. My life doesn't stop because they tried to steal from me." I walked away from the cameras, from the questions, from the whole circus, back to my life. The one I'd built, the one they'd tried to take. 6 months later, I was standing on the balcony of the Phoenix Lofts, looking out at the city skyline. The restaurant below was fully booked. The boutique was thriving. All 62 apartments were occupied with a waiting list. My phone rang. "Richard Chen, how's retirement?" I asked. He'd hung up his practice last month. "Boring. I missed the courtroom drama, but not the 3L phone calls from panicking clients." "Fair enough. I called because I heard something interesting. Your sister's lawyer is filing an appeal." "On what grounds?" "Ineffective assistance of counsel. She's claiming Donnelly botched her case." "Will it work?" "No. The evidence was too overwhelming, but she's trying. Still playing victim. Some people never learn." After we hung up, I stayed on the balcony, watching the sun set over the city I'd conquered, piece by piece, property by property. My family had wanted to take what I'd built, wanted to steal my success and claim it as their own. But they'd underestimated me one final time. They'd thought I was still that kid living in their basement, still that janitor they could dismiss, still that failure they'd always told me I was. Instead, I was the man who'd turned their doubt into fuel, their mockery into motivation, their limitations into a challenge I'd won. I own 12 properties worth $18.4 million. I employed 63 people across my various ventures. I'd saved a historic theater and transformed a neighborhood. I'd built an empire from nothing while they called me worthless. And when they tried to steal it, I'd let the truth destroy them. Not violence, not revenge, just evidence, just facts, just the undeniable proof of who I was versus who they'd claimed I was. My grandmother would have been proud. I pulled out my phone and looked at the last text message I'd received from Nicole before the trial. She'd sent it from a burner number I later had to block. "You're going to lose everything. We'll make sure of it. You're nothing without this family." I deleted it because she was wrong. I was everything without them. The game was over and I'd